morning we are starting a teaching series in the Gospel of John. If you're unfamiliar with the Bible, if the Bible's new to you, the Gospel of John is a biography of Jesus, sharing the life, the ministry, the teachings of Jesus. And we at Anchor, as we're praying about what we sense God wanting to bring and teach to the community of Anchor across, at Central and Lakewood and Lincoln, we just felt like we wanted to spend a long time just walking with Jesus. And so over the next 2 years, we're going to be in the Gospel of John. Now, if you're nervous about, oh my gosh, 2 years, I'll remove a little bit of that anxiety because we'll be spending 6 weeks, kind of 6 or so weeks in the Gospel of John, and then taking a break and doing a teaching series that feels important, relevant, and helpful for the Anchor community. So we'll be in and out of the Gospel of John, slowly walking with Jesus over the next 2 years. And this is important for many reasons, but one of the things that I'm thinking about is that I know in our community, there are many people that are new to Jesus, that are wondering, should I begin a journey of following him? And there's others of us that are so over familiar with him that we might need to reintroduce ourselves. And so because that really represents so many of us, it just seems appropriate to just take this long journey, step by step, with the one who is the center of our faith. So, with that said, we're going to be in John chapter 1, and we're going to be reading the first 18 verses this morning. And one of the things that, I was talking with Mason, our Lakewood lead, a few weeks ago, and he goes, I cannot read an electronic Bible. And he said, there are too many notifications, there are too many distractions. Every time I sit down with the app, I get distracted by something else there. And so he says, I need to go analog. And so as we're starting reading the Gospel of John, as we're starting in this gospel, I just would recommend maybe that's you, and maybe over the course of our teaching series in John, maybe it's time for you to go analog to that one, the paper Bible, and bringing it as we kind of slowly take these steps of following John. I like the ability while I'm teaching to be able to kind of magnify and I don't know. So, So here we are in the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verses 1 to 18. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning, and through him all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John, and he came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of a human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testified concerning him. He cried out, saying, "This is the one I spoke about when I said, 'He who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me.'" Now, on that, John, say that again. Out of his fullness, we have all received grace in place of grace already given. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God but the one and only Son, who is himself God, as in his closest relationship with the Father, has made him known. When Candace and I, my wife, were dating and she lived in South Africa, we engaged in this obscure and antiquated practice that is little known to contemporary humankind. You may have maybe heard of it as something that happened in the past, letter writing. Bizarre, I know. But because South Africa is about as far away from Washington State as is possible, there was this lag between our letters. So everything that I got, when I got a letter from Candace, I knew every detail in that letter already. It was no important information that I was surprised by, because we were also buying a lot of phone calling cards, if you guys remember those. I was actually buying most of those. And emailing. So we were using all of the means of communication, but there was something about holding that envelope and holding that letter. And sometimes she would put a trinket or some type of sticker or bookmark or something like that in the envelope, and I had this real, tangible connection to her. Maybe you can relate. The sense of expectation for when word will come, for when something tangible and touchable, an expression of the person you're wanting connection with, will arrive. Well, Scripture, John here, the passage we just read, makes this argument, you could say, or communicates that all of creation, all of humanity was on their tiptoes, whether they realized it or not, with this mix of anticipation and longing for word to come from the one who made all. In fact, the whole Old Testament, you could say, is a record of God sending word to his creation and his people through prophets and pictures that come in prayer and promises that prove themselves through testing. But here, right at the top of the Gospel of John, John declares that the Word has come as a person in flesh, as Jesus. And the Gospel of John is a record of what happens when that Word comes in flesh. And what we see is, and what we'll be looking at today and this morning, is that when that word comes in flesh, it brings fulfillment. Fulfillment for all of the things we really long for, things that we long for underneath our longings, things we crave underneath our cravings. It brings fulfillment there. But then it also brings challenge. It challenges us on our allegiances. And it also brings an opportunity. The Gospel of John, right there at the beginning, it tells us that, when Jesus came, it resonated with humanity's longings. There, so take a look. Let's look closely at the first few verses. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Now, we're going to be looking at that word here in a little bit, but check this out. It says here, "Through him all things were made." So Jesus is there. He's part of the work of creation. He's part of the work of making this world. And without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life. And that life, this is remarkable, that life was the light of all mankind. You could think of this as, it's a way of saying it, is that Rembrandt is perhaps known most for the way he uses light in his paintings. That one of the marks of the master is that his ability to use light. And it's as if you can tell a real Rembrandt by the use of light. What John is communicating is that we all have the master's use of light within us. Now, pay attention to how universal this is. John isn't saying only some people. He's saying all people. Even people that have not started a journey of following Jesus carry the Creator's light with them. Even while they may wonder if there is an artist, they are made by the artist. Even if they wonder if there is a signature signing who made them, they carry that signature within them. So when Jesus comes, one of the things that we see continuing to happen up to this present day is that it's almost as if he shows, the artist himself shows up to the art, and we all of a sudden realize that we were made and that we carry his marks. And just as maybe it's hard for us to imagine, but it's as if the art starts to acknowledge the artist and finds that this important, fulfilling connection. So the word is important for us to get this brain around, our minds around the idea of fulfillment too. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Later on, it will say the Word became flesh. And so there's this sense of the Old Testament that there is this hope in the Old Testament of this promise that would come through prophetic word, that the prophets would proclaim about what is the one who is coming. And so what we see is that word that was promised and proclaimed through prophets now has come in flesh. In fact, you could say that all of the Old Testament is really a record, it's just this record of reaching for fulfillment. It ends with pointing to the day that a Messiah will come. And the New Testament is the record of the one who came to fulfill. I've created this document actually that describes all the different ways the Old Testament is a fulfillment of, the New Testament is a fulfillment of the Old Testament. And if you're interested, you can grab the connection card and just make a note of send me that piece of paper. And we'll send it to you through email on a PDF sometime this week. If you just drop it in the giving stations, we'll make sure you have that. You'll be able to see all the many prophecies that are fulfilled because Jesus is coming. And you'll be able to see all the different what's called typological signs. Meaning that there's these shadows of Christ that show their fulfillment in the New Testament. All of this is this sense of fulfillment. One of these types, just to kind of look at it quickly, is in John 1:14. I think we had it on the screen recently. We just put it back up. It says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Now, the word dwelling among us is actually, in the Greek, it means he tented up. He tented up. He tabernacled. In the Old Testament, you see, the tabernacle was the thing that held God's glory. It was the thing that Israel wandered in the wilderness and set up camp, and the tabernacle was the place where God's glory dwelt. And here John is saying that that the Word took on flesh and tabernacled among us, and we have seen his glory. Meaning that the shadow of God's glory moving among us in the Old Testament is fulfilled by the true light, Jesus Christ. But it is not just, check this out, it's not just that the fulfillment happens to the Jews in the sense of sacred history throughout the Old Testament. It's also that all of humanity has this sense of hope being fulfilled. For instance, the word in the Greek, it means logos, which logos is an important word in ancient Greek philosophy. It means the rational divine principle that permeates and orders the universe. So when John used that word, he is speaking to a Jewish audience about the fulfillment, about prophetic hope, and he is speaking to a Greek audience about this idea, this philosophical concept that you have an inkling of is actually truly expressed in the person of Jesus Christ. What is John saying? He's saying that all human desire and longing is answered, not by an it, not by a concept, but by a who, a person, Jesus Christ. How beautiful is this? Some of us right now have not set out on a journey with Jesus. We're looking, we're wondering. And I would just say that John would tell you that your hope, your fulfillment, the thing that you reach for, that you may not even know you're reaching for, the security you hope for, the love you long for, the peace you ache for, the freedom you reach for is ultimately only found in Jesus Christ. One theologian said that all humans carry within them a sense of God. The Latin is sensus divinitatis, that we carry this sense of God within ourselves, and you cannot escape it because you are made by the Master and you carry the Master's light. Bertrand Russell, one of the most intelligent people in the 20th century, a British philosopher, says, though he's an atheist, he said this: the center of me is always in eternally a terrible pain, a curious wild pain, a searching for something beyond what the world contains, something transfigured and infinite. I do not find it. I do not think it is to be found, but the love of it is my life. John is saying what Bertrand Russell is saying, but Russell doesn't believe it's there. John's saying it is. He is. I was talking with some friends here that go to Anchor recently, and we were talking about these two characters. Maybe you've heard of them, J.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. And Tolkien actually helped lead C.S. Lewis to faith. So some people might not know that, but this is kind of an interesting detail of their life. And there's this crucial moment where Tolkien and Lewis were in conversation with each other. Lewis, a hardened atheist at the time, and Tolkien, a believer in Jesus. And they're talking about this idea of myth. And by myth, they didn't mean kind of like a lie. They meant kind of like these stories that are so significant and moving and powerful, like that are expressed in various cultures, but they somehow stay with us over thousands of years because they tap into kind of something innately, deeply human. And both Tolkien and Lewis were like fascinated with myth. And their conversation, this is kind of like a paraphrase, but this is kind of like as they're walking around Oxford, 1931, you can imagine the movie scene, they're having this conversation. And Lewis says, myths are lies, though lies breathed through silver. Tolkien says, no, they're not lies. Myths carry deep truths. They reflect fragments of divine reality. Lewis says, but they are invented stories, not fact. And Tolkien says they are expressions of truth. Through imagination, we make myths because we are made by the image of a creator. Tolkien says, yet Christianity claims to be history. It's different. Lewis says, yet Christianity claims to be history. It's different. And Tolkien responds, exactly. Christianity is the one true myth, a myth that entered history. It is the same power as the old myths, but with one great difference. It really happened. And it was that conversation that started to move Lewis towards wondering, could this be true? What is Lewis and where is Tolkien saying? He's saying what John is saying. He's saying that the one who came fulfills all of the things you reach for, even if you don't know it. But he doesn't just fulfill, he challenges. You see there in verse 9, it says, the true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. There is this sense of misunderstanding, not getting it. He was treated poorly and disregarded by the religious elite and Pilate. And one of the most tragic, poignant scenes is looking right at Jesus, and he stares right at Jesus. And if you're not aware, Pilate is a leader that would be an important piece of Jesus moving towards the cross. And Pilate says, "What is truth?" While he's looking right at truth. Jesus challenges and confronts. He fulfills, but he challenges and confronts. He challenges and confronts you. And maybe that's the reason why you haven't yet said yes to Jesus, because you're looking at what you might lose if you start following him. When we look at what we might lose when we start following him, we will always be paralyzed because we're taking our eyes off of him. You will always gain far more than what you lose, but if your eyes are focused on what you lose, you will never move. It's when we behold him that things start to change. But he challenges us. He confronts us. He confronts us to let go of the small gods that we cling to so that we can find union again with the one who made us. You know, that's one thing I love is hearing stories of people coming to see this truth. And one thing is like when you hear a story of a person coming to faith in Jesus, what you'll find is that there's all these themes and parallels between all the stories, but every story is unique, right? For some people, it's this long journey. For others, it's instantaneous. For some, it's kind of the silent work of God. And for others of us, it's fireworks and it's a show, baby. Well, one of the stories from Anchor, an Anchor community, that of a person that came to faith reads like this. A year and a half ago, a woman came to church. After attending for a month, she told me that she'd given her life to Jesus. This is a true story, by the way. She was a yoga teacher, and through her practice, though her practice had provided some spiritual solace, at her core, she was still restless and struggling existentially. She'd been praying to Ganesh, which is the god that removes obstacles in the Hindu faith, for a while, because she was in the middle of a place where there was lots of obstacles. And what do? You pray to the one who removes them, I guess. This wasn't the first time, but right there when she was praying to Ganesh, she had a vision of Jesus. This wasn't the first time Jesus had appeared to her. He had appeared a handful of other times in previous months and even years in her dreams and meditations. However, this time she finally said yes to him, finding now a capital T truth and the God above all gods. Her restlessness and existential struggle, as she will tell you, rapidly melted away, and this woman has become a dear friend and a member here at Anchor Church. Now, I think all of us find ourselves at various points in a similar position. When Jesus shows up, will we trust him? If he shows up in a dream, if he shows up in a vision, if he shows up subtly and silently offering his hand through maybe this very faint whisper of a way, will you trust him? He will challenge, and he does this. He challenges us right now. He challenges all through the gospel, as we'll see throughout the book of John. He challenges religious leaders. He challenges social outcasts. He challenges those born blind and oppressed by the demonic. He challenges political leaders. He challenges all. Well, here's the reason why. Because he wants to invite all towards true truth, towards the real God, towards real hope. His challenge is always kind, because he's kind. But the light shines in the darkness. In verse 5, it says the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And the Bible scholars will tell you that the light shines, it's present tense. Actually, it's pretty clear in the English as well. It's present tense, meaning that the light shines on. It continues to shine right now. And we are faced with this challenge. Will we side with the light? Will we step into the light? Or is the light scary? It's not, but will we step into the light? Light does two things. It illuminates, it helps us see clearly, and it warms. It brings warmth. So Jesus fulfills and he challenges. But then he offers an opportunity. And this opportunity is to every one of us. Verse 12 to 13, it says, "Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of a human decision or a husband's will, but born of God." The word "receive" there is this active word, meaning it's extended to you. It's not like you're just waiting and all of a sudden it just pours out on you, but it's like it's extended. Here it is. Here's the opportunity. Will you take it? And you have to take it. That's the idea, that it's extended to you and you have to grab a hold of it. It's not just it's not something that passively happens to you. You have to take what is extended to you. And so all who receive in him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right. Meaning that you have the ability. The door is opened. You have the power to perform the steps required. It is extended. It's before you. It's right there. Now here's the thing, is that every one of us finds ourselves in various situations that are comparable to this moment, where this gift is extended to you, and we have to say yes or we say no. The opportunity is there. No one else can make that decision for you, and that decision will always be made by faith. And there are these parallels. Like, think about if you happen to be married when you said, "I do." There was no promise of how your marriage would go. It was a faith decision that moved you into a new identity as husband or wife. Similarly, when those of us who are parents, when you became a parent, there was a moment where all of a sudden now you're a parent, but it was a faith decision to engage as a dad. Or engage as a mom. There were no promises about how your journey as a parent would be. When we stepped into this role as church planters years ago, there were no promises of how that would be. It was a faith decision to go and see God and see what God would do. But every one of these decisions transforms in one way or another your identity. As you make this faith decision, the same opportunity is before us always today. That you can say yes to that which is extended towards you. That which fulfills everything you've ever really needed on a deep level. Even though it challenges all the things you might hold on to, all the small gods that you might hold on to. You have an opportunity. And that response to that opportunity is always a faith step. But as you take that step, your identity changes. And you become the Rembrandt that knows you are made by the Maker. There's no more question. There's no more wondering. You know the light that is inside you that you've wondered about is actually a gift from God. You know the gifts that he's given you, they start to bloom like a bed of flowers. The fruit that he starts working, and all of a sudden you become loving and you become kind and you become peaceful and patient because the Spirit's working in you. You know that you are a masterpiece because the Master made you, and there's no more questions anymore. I just would submit to you that That right here at the beginning of this gospel is an opportunity for you. One of the repeated lines early on is, come and see. Jesus invites the disciples invite others, come and see. Will you come and see? Come and see how good he is. Come and see what he does. Come and see how he fulfills. Come and see how he challenges. Come and see. That is the opportunity. If you want to make a first-time commitment to Jesus Christ today, if you sense God challenging you in a beautiful way, if you want that fulfillment that only he can bring, there's just a really easy way to do that. You can just on the connection card put, I want to follow Jesus. And then drop it in the connection card or come up to me afterwards. We'd love to pray with you and talk about what that next step is. We pray for us as we move towards communion and prayer stations. Holy Spirit, would you come in this place? You are better than a good idea. You are better than our best thought. You are the greatest love, the greatest master, the one who empowers, heals, restores. So we thank you for the way you challenge us. We thank you for the way you challenge us to let go of the things that keep us from you. And I just pray for some of us, we might be able to make that decision for the first, maybe the 1,000th time this morning.